Hey, we want our freedom, religion is too restrictive, errors in the Qur'an. So what about non-Muslims? And also we shall deal with each one of these headings as well as the related topics. Let's start with the first one. Religion is the opium of the masses. الدين أفيون الشعوب, as said in Arabic. And of course we know the leftist movements use this sentence because it was proclaimed by Karl Marx in the late 1800s. And in German it is Die Religion ist das Opium des Volks, meaning religion is the opium of the masses. So this would mean that religion was an obstacle for progress, and human beings need to progress, they need to prosper. So religion will be a stumbling block for the progressive movement. This would result from the tendency to neglect the worldly life in order to focus one's attention on the afterlife. This is what is meant by the statement. We're still explaining it here. By doing this, there would be no scientific discoveries and life would be miserable. In addition to that, there will be no prosperity, no growth, and the economy will be in constant depression, while the masses, will be lazing off and focusing on their prayers and devotions. So in conclusion, the nations will be on slow suicide mode. Now, if we examine the history, this would apply by excellence to the societies in the Middle Ages in Europe, not in the Muslim world. If you study, the control of the church and the opposition, that the scientists and the thinkers were facing by the church because their claims or their scientific endeavors were in opposition with the conceived ideals of the church. Like, for example, Galileo and Giordano Bruno and others were oppressed, and some others were killed. Even Copernicus. So, etc. I think you know this history. So we want to examine this statement. Does this apply to Islam? This is what we are concerned about. Let us take a look. If we examine the scriptures and the history of Islam, we'll find out that none of the aforementioned descriptions apply. Let us have a brief examination. It was Islam that moved the Arabs from the darkness of ignorance and superstition to the light of knowledge and logical reasoning. What would the Arabs be without Islam? Of course, now we have the majority of Arabs are Muslims and they are backwards. Our explanation for that is that they have distanced themselves from Islam. And inshallah, we hope that there's an awakening among the youth, among the Muslims or the Arabs returning to Islam. And Islam is not dependent upon a certain ethnicity or a certain nationality. We know that. It's beyond that. And the Arabs are a minority among the Muslims. We all know that. So it was Islam, as we said, that moved Arabs from ignorance to knowledge and reason. Many verses, if we were to mention the verses, it would be the whole lecture about knowledge and science in Islam. They encourage people to think, reflect, ponder, and abandon the blind following of their fathers and forefathers. Blind following is prohibited in Islam. Your belief is not accepted if it's just my mom and dad are Muslims. You should be convinced of Islam. It should be out of your own choice to have your faith accepted by God. This is what we believe in. This is what the Muslims believe in, by consensus. Also, the Islamic worldview can be known through the following. Let's see, for example, the verses. And say work, وَقَدْ اعْمَلُوا. Soon will God observe your work and His apostle and the believers. So, encouraging people to work, to have good deeds. And another verse, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِزَكَاتِهِمْ عَامِلُونَ. And those who work in order to pay their zakat. The zakat is a tax that you cannot pay if you are not productive. If you don't have enough money to pay your zakat, you see, which is the annual obligatory charity that a Muslim should pay, you cannot pay zakat. So we should be working. We should be having some kind of activities, productive activities in this lifetime. And also this will be fulfilling and helping us to fulfill our religious activities. Now, also the Prophet Muhammad said, "Ad-dunya mazra'atul akhirah." The ephemeral world, meaning dunya, is the farming land for the hereafter, the akhirah. And if you have a farming land, and if you're not plowing the field and sowing the seeds and working, you will not have any fruits, you will not have any plants, right? So, by conclusion, we can know that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is telling us that we should be working hard in this world in order to harvest in the hereafter. Okay, so also Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu the companion of the Prophet, one of the closest companions, and the best of them. And the second caliph, the caliphs are the rulers who came after the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and they were in leadership for the Muslim Ummah, for the Muslim nation. He was the second caliph after Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. He used to scold those who spent all of their times in the masjid praying and supplicating. He was an enemy of non-productivity in Muslim society. So if he would see people all the time from the Fajr to the evening sitting in the masjid and praying all the time, he would tell them, go out and work. The sky is not, there's no, gold and silver falling down from the sky, so you should be working. He'll be encouraging them to work. Also, let us see the quotation of some of the Orientalists or the historians like Philippe Hitti, for example, in Short History of the Arabs. He said, during all the first part of the Middle Ages, no other people made as important a contribution to human progress as did the Arabs. If we take this term to mean all those whose mother tongue was Arabic, and not merely those living in the Arabian Peninsula, for centuries, Arabic was the language of learning. Like now, for example, we have to learn English, we have to do the TOEFL, the SAT, to go to universities, to, if I say universities which have credibility. In that time, people used to learn Arabic in order to learn sciences. So, it was the language of learning, culture, and intellectual progress for the whole of the civilized world, with the exception of the Far East. From the 9th to the 12th century, there were more philosophical, medical, historical, religious, astronomical, and geographical works written in Arabic than in any other human tongue. So he's a non-Muslim, Philippe Hitti. He's one of the historians who are close to objectivity, if you want to say, because objectivity is almost impossible because each one of us will be subjective to a certain extent, but you can reduce your subjectivity by being honest and being truthful. Also, Friedrich Nietzsche, the one who died out of madness, in his book The Antichrist, he said about the Muslim civilization, Islam at least assumes that it is dealing with man. He was at first talking about Christianity, that it had destroyed Europe and brought man down, and there was no progress, there was no prosperity. So here he was talking, on the other hand, Islam at least assumed that it is dealing with man. The wonderful culture of the Moors, Al-Magharida, or those Muslims who came to Spain and established the civilization, the Andalusia civilization in Spain, which was fundamentally nearer to us and appealed more to our senses and tastes as human beings than that of Rome and Greece, was trampled down. Why? Because it had to thank noble and manly instincts for its origin. He's talking about the Muslims. Because it said yes to life. And on the other hand, you see, of course, we are not bashing any kind of religion, but I'm talking about the misuse or the misunderstanding of religion that led to atrocious, subhanAllah, behavior and actions that had destroyed many civilizations. And of course, I personally condemn acts that are totally uncivilized, committed by Muslims as well. But here, as Nietzsche was saying, or what he means, if you have read the book also and other writings, that Christianity brought Europe down. There was no progress, there was no science, there was no intellectual endeavor as it was supposed to be. So he said, a civilization beside which even that of our 19th century seemed very poor and very senile. And, so this is a quotation by a non-Muslim, Friedrich Nietzsche, and he was also anti-religious, but he was being fair enough by recognizing the greatness of the Muslim civilization.